Welcome to Therapy Explained, where we explain, demystify, and destigmatize mental health and mental health treatment. My name is Deniss. I'm a licensed therapist and clinical director of Talk Therapy. We are a group practice in California that offers individual and couples therapy. But here on YouTube, I just make videos about all things mental health because I believe that everyone has a right to free mental health information and education. And today we're going to be talking about how to survive the holidays, family gatherings edition. So specifically, how can we protect our mental health and our inner peace when we go to these family gatherings, especially as BIPOC adults, because BIPOC communities tend to be collective communities. And so things like family, and especially during the holidays, kind of get in the way. While they are wonderful values to have, it can sometimes be distorted, and we end up feeling obligated and pressured to attend gatherings that might actually be toxic or hurtful to us. So how can we make a plan to protect our mental health while attending some of the events that maybe we're not ready to say no to altogether, or maybe that we don't necessarily want to say no to altogether, but still feel safe while we're there? As always, if you find this video useful or helpful at any point, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and remember that even though I am a licensed therapist, I am not your therapist. However, if you would like one of us at my practice to be your therapist, you can always check out the free consultation link down below or other resources on our website. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. How can we build a plan to protect our mental health during family gatherings for the holidays? Number one, prepare your mind. Prepare yourself mentally by thinking about these particular events. It might also be helpful to take some time to sit and write down the events, the people, topics, or situations that you think might be triggering during the holidays. We will create some coping tools around this a little bit later on, but it's important for us to even just know what could be potentially triggering or activating to our nervous system so that we can actually create a plan. Sometimes some of the things that we're coming up with might actually be catastrophizing thoughts, otherwise known as like worst case scenarios that we're making up in our head, but they don't come from anywhere. They are usually rooted in our past experiences with these people and with these events. But it's important to remember that a lot of our worst case scenarios can be helpful to plan ahead and prepare, but without holding it as a fact for ourselves. Because once we get into that place where we're thinking of these catastrophizing thoughts or worst case scenarios as things that will definitely happen, then that ends up affecting our mental health more than helping it. So as you're making this list, remember, yes, it's a possibility. It might be a very real possibility, but we don't know that that's going to happen. And the purpose of this exercise is also to help you plan for these so it doesn't have to necessarily happen in that way or at all. So thinking about these things, the people, situation, and events that might be potentially triggering is step one to preparing your mind. But you can also prepare yourself mentally by preparing some affirmations. Being in the moment, being in some of these activating situations, or even learning how to set boundaries can itself be activating. It might make us feel a little uncomfortable. So preparing some affirmations, things that we can repeat to ourselves to help remind us of the reason why we're setting boundaries, of maybe the way that we can try to help ourselves feel safe and that we're allowed to do that can be helpful. Now, we put together some of our favorite affirmations as an affirmation deck that is available for purchase on our website, and by ours I mean the practice. So me and my associates at the practice kind of came up with our favorite affirmations and put them together for you. So if you want to check those out, you can get those through the website, but you can also find them for free on Instagram. I see some on Pinterest. Anywhere on the web you can find some affirmations, take a screenshot, save them for yourself, save them in a notes app, and these are things that you can look over and visit whenever you need to help prepare you mentally. Ultimately, remember that even though other people's behaviors, thoughts, feelings are out of your control, you do have a lot of control over how you respond to them and how you take care of yourself, which is what we're hoping to focus on today. Next piece is to prepare your body. Now, body-centered grounding and preparation, I like to look at it in 3 different stages. And I also like to call it a coping tools sandwich, and it'll make sense in a second. So basically, like in a sandwich, your 2 pieces of bread are going to be your coping tools, your grounding tools, or grounding routine. And then the middle part of your sandwich is the triggering event. So we want to sandwich that particularly activating event with some coping tools to help your whole mind and body feel at ease. So the way that we want to do this is we want to prepare some coping tools. So brainstorm things that help your body feel calm before you go to your family gathering. If you know that it's going to be particularly activating to your nervous system, soothe it first. This can look like going for a walk or listening to some soothing music, meditation, yoga, journaling, drinking some tea, slowing it down and calming yourself and your body before you enter this family event or before you travel to visit your family. A little extra bonus piece is also to try to engage in some of these coping tools during the event, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go on in the video. But if you have some rubber bands or magnets or Play-Doh or something that helps you feel soothed in terms of your touch, right? When we talk about senses to help us feel soothed, touch can be a really good one. If you have any essential oils to help you feel soothed through smell, that can also be something you can take with you. And these are all tools that you can make use of as you're traveling to the event and during the event as well to help your nervous system feel a little bit calmer. And the other side of this sandwich is to also engage in some coping tools after the event. If you're feeling anxious, stressed out, nervous during your family gathering, your nervous system might need some soothing before you can go to sleep or before you can really feel restful and at ease again. So we want to then engage in some coping tools that can help us get there. So again, anything like drinking tea or listening to soothing music or journaling, coloring, all of these can be really helpful. Now, some family gatherings tend to go very late into the night, so perhaps some of these things might not be as accessible like in the middle of the night, but if you plan for something more soothing the next morning, that can also be just as helpful. So creating maybe some buffers and not planning anything the next morning till maybe after lunch or as late as possible so that you have a calming, soothing morning for yourself. If you're visiting family, maybe staying in your room a little bit longer, or if you don't have your own personal space when you're visiting family, making sure that you are going out for a walk and let people know, like, I'll be back, I'm just going to take a walk, or I'm going to go to a coffee shop and grab some coffee. Does anybody want anything? And then you can also, this is a way that you can technically connect with your family because you're grabbing something for them, but you're also giving yourself that space to breathe and to relax after the morning after this event. So there's many ways in which you can help your body feel soothed before, during, and after. And some of these might need to look like actual routines. Like I said, maybe the next morning needs to be soothing, and maybe the whole morning before the event also needs to look soothing. Now, I know that we're all going to be in different situations, so some of these might not be as doable for you, but do as much as you can. Remember, the one question that we ask ourselves that can be helpful in moments like this is, if I can't do that, or that doesn't feel doable to me, what does? What can I do? How can I help myself? So if any of these suggestions you're thinking, that's not very realistic, I don't think I really can do that, that's okay. Hopefully this gets you started in thinking, okay, if not that, what can I do? What's the closest to that I can get that fits me? Take breaks throughout. So the next piece of being able to survive and protect your mental health during gatherings with your family is to plan for breaks throughout the event. Now, these can be a little bit tricky, again, depending on your culture, your family, the space that you're in. So again, if you're staying with your family, you might not necessarily be able to create too much space, but we just have to be a little bit creative. During the event, you can always step outside for some fresh air, go to the restroom and splash some water on your face, or go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. You can always excuse yourself just by saying, I'll be right back. You don't have to tell them what you're doing, or you can say, I'll be right back, I'm gonna get some water, I'll be right back, just gotta use the restroom, or I'll be right back, I gotta get some fresh air. So again, you don't necessarily have to tell them what you're doing, but you can excuse yourself briefly to get a breath, to catch a breath for yourself throughout the event. The more that you can do this when you're starting to feel maybe a little bit activated, the more you are able to feel grounded for longer and again, survive the event. If you're someone that tends to be overwhelmed and sometimes get reactive, and then you feel like you're not very proud of how you handled certain things, these breaks are going to be key. Again, creating those breaks for yourself will help keep you grounded and prevent you from getting overwhelmed and then maybe just being reactive or hurtful towards someone. So these breaks can be very helpful and very useful at preventing some of these more reactive situations. And again, going back to those coping tools, if you have magnets or rubber bands or Play-Doh that you can use, while you're talking to people, as you're, in the event itself, that can also be useful because you don't necessarily have to excuse yourself from a room physically, but you can be playing with something to help soothe you. Prepare some boundary scripts. So by this, I mean prepare some boundary phrases. That list that we created earlier of people, situations, events, topics that might be potentially triggering, this is a time in which you can use that list and then think of ways to set boundaries around that. Now, this can look like having a more firm and clear boundary, like saying, I'm not comfortable engaging in that conversation, that's not something I want to talk about, or that's not a topic that I want to talk about right now. Can we talk about something else? Or it's not something I want to talk about, and then I'm walking away. Again, setting these very firm boundaries might be something that you feel safe enough doing. But if you don't, sometimes it might just look like changing the subject or politely excusing yourself and out of a conversation or interaction with someone. As BIPOC adults, again, it's important for us to remember that culturally, some things might be too hard for us to do, might be uncomfortable for us to do, and might really, honestly, at the end of the day, just not align with our values. So our boundaries are going to look like however we need them to, and give yourself that permission. So somebody's boundary might be a very firm, clear, you know what, Thea, I just don't like to talk about that, and then walking away. But if you're thinking to yourself, I could never do that, I don't ever want to do that, that's okay too. Maybe it's more like, oh yeah, gracias, Tia, and that's it, changing the subject, or okay, acknowledging that you've heard what they've said, moving on to a different topic. So again, the boundary can look like however you want it to. And I'll talk a little bit more about these boundaries and what they should look like in a next portion of the video as we keep going, but having a good idea of the things that you want to say can be helpful, because then you can just pull out some of these boundaries throughout the event, and you don't have to think of oh my gosh, what should I say? How can I say it? And all these things. You can do that now. So sit back and think, okay, how can I set a boundary with this person or within this topic or in this situation to help me feel safe? And that is key. We want to assess for safety to begin with that particular person. Again, you might feel comfortable saying that to your cousin, but maybe not to your aunt or your uncle, or maybe not to your parents. So again, go through that list and ask yourself, how safe do I feel with these people? Setting what kind of boundary, right? And then adjusting. And then once you have these scripts, you can again just pull from them and say, this is what I've got prepared, and you can feel confident in saying it because you know what you want to say and how you want to say it. If you need some help creating some of these boundaries and sentence structures, we do have a template available for you on our website, so check it out. Take baby steps. Setting boundaries can be challenging, and so much of it requires practice and a lot of trial and error, especially if you're in the beginning of this journey for yourself. You're figuring out what your boundary needs to be, and then you're having to teach it to other people. And so they will also have their own journey around being able to respect that. So you might have a long-term goal of not wanting to attend some of these events altogether, right? You wish that you could just say no to certain things, but if that's too challenging and overwhelming for you right now, it's okay. You don't have to do that right now. Take baby steps. Maybe you don't feel like you can say that just yet. So what can you do? It might look like just creating firmer boundaries during the event, leaving earlier or arriving later. Again, that can also be a boundary, right? Saying, yes, I can attend that event, but I'm gonna have to leave by this time, right? Or I'm going to have to arrive a little bit late. So again, that is also a boundary. And you can experiment with what feels comfortable and safe to you. On the other hand, you might be someone who thinks, no, I would never want to say no to family events. That's something that's really important to me, and that's okay too. Boundaries need to align with your values. You might see a lot of people giving examples of boundaries online and saying, like, this is what you should do, this is what you should try to say. And sure, yeah, if they align with your boundaries, try it. But again, the question is, does it align with what you want? Does it align with your values and the kind of life that you want to build for yourself? So baby steps are key. What is your ultimate goal? That's wonderful, but maybe that's not something you can do just yet, and that's okay. Build up to it slowly. Practice it. Some of the phrases that you might have come up with to prepare for this year's events might not look like the ones that you have next year. Maybe the ones next year are a little bit firmer, or a little bit clearer, and that's all right. Look at this as a journey. And a few last words on boundaries. I know that the idea of setting boundaries and the idea of establishing these things can be scary. Sometimes they just simply don't align with our values, and again, that's okay, adjust as needed. But we might also be afraid, even when it does align with our values and it's something that we want to do, that the people around us are not going to accept it. That if we set boundaries, we end up being afraid they might reject us, they might abandon us, they might judge us. And that's totally fair and normal and valid. But it's important for us to remember these two things. Number one, we don't actually know what someone is going to say or do or how they will react. And that initial reaction might be just that, an initial reaction, and they might come around eventually. But the second thing to remember is that ultimately, we have no control over someone's thoughts, behaviors, or feelings. The whole point of boundaries is to keep us safe and to build a life that we are happy and proud of. I hope that today's video was helpful in getting some of that work started. I hope that you were able to create a plan to keep you safe. I know that we just had a holiday, and hopefully that will serve as a source of information for yourself. So what worked, what helped, what didn't, and maybe as you're developing this plan with this video today, you can use some of that information to adjust that plan so that it fits you for the upcoming holidays and the holidays that will continue to come. If you found the video useful or helpful, or if you feel that you learned something, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.